The thing in the crate was snarling again. It wasn't the high-pitched screech of a cornered predator or the low, drawn-out growl of a territorial beast. This sound was deep and wet, like volcanic rock cracking under pressure. The containment field buzzed louder with every pulse of its chest against the reinforced walls. Dr. Caidan Lorrey crouched beside the crate, not too close but close enough. His arm was bleeding from a gash just above the elbow, and he hadn't bothered to wrap it yet. Not with the thing inside watching him, eyes glowing faint blue beneath the matted fur. It had 4 eyes. That wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part was that all 4 were locked on him, and they didn't blink. "Tell me this is a joke," said the voice behind him, sharp, high, and shaking. "Caidan, tell me this is a simulation, some kind of psychological trial." Caidan didn't look up. "If it is, I'd like a refund. I failed psych trials in med school." The alien behind him, a gangled-limbed Scifi named Dr. Vharril, crouched lower to the floor, his pale green skin taking on a sickly yellow hue. He'd been in practice for over 70 galactic years and had treated everything from plasma-blooded serpents to the gas-bellied Uruk. But this had him trembling. "That is a dire Varnac pup," Vharril whispered. "A pup? Do you know what that means?" Caidan raised an eyebrow, finally turning to face him. "You're panicking over a baby." That baby killed a full-grown Krell soldier, ripped through armor-grade carapace like it was wet cloth. Its saliva has paralytic enzymes. Its musculature is denser than any species we've ever cataloged. And it's still growing. Caidan turned back to the crate. The pup, was breathing hard now, its flanks rising and falling, blood still matting its dark gray fur. A deep gash along its hind leg still oozed. It hadn't moved since they'd gotten it back from the field, except to shred 3 of the transport guards' gloves while sedated. He reached a hand, slow and deliberate, toward the edge of the crate. The pup's body tensed. "Caidan," Vharril hissed, "it will tear your arm off." "It's only a pup," Caidan said quietly. "And it's in pain." "You're insane." "Probably," Caidan muttered. He pressed the override on the containment field. The humming died. Vharril made a sound halfway between a gasp and a sputter. "You released it?" Caidan didn't respond. He focused on the pup. It didn't lunge. It didn't growl again. It just looked at him, 4 eyes blinking finally, and its body slumped, the tension draining. Its hind leg twitched. Caidan reached into his med pack, pulled out a gauze wrap, and began cleaning the wound. The pup didn't flinch. Its breathing remained steady. A low, rumbling sound came from its throat, not threatening anymore. Almost content? Vharril peeked from behind a console. "It's letting you touch it." "Yeah," Caidan said, voice low, "because I'm not treating it like a bomb." He cleaned the wound as best he could, then injected a low-dose sedative, not enough to knock it out, just enough to dull the pain. The pup blinked at him again, its tongue lolled out. It was panting. "Temperature's rising," he said. "It's going into shock." "You want to move it?" Vharril asked. "To the ICU?" Caidan nodded. "I'll need help and armor." They got the pup on a hover stretcher. It took 4 tranquilizer darts and 15 minutes of slow coaxing. The pup didn't fight. It just whimpered, low, guttural, and pressed its nose against Caidan's sleeve. When they reached the ICU bay, the room was cleared. No one wanted to be near it. The only other human in the facility, a nurse named Lyra Garnet, showed up with a tray of sterilized tools and a look that hovered between curiosity and horror. "That's it?" she asked, peering at the pup through the observation window. "That's the apex predator?" "Yup," Caidan said, scrubbing in, "and it's got a dislocated hip and a laceration deep enough to nick bone." "It's kind of cute," she said. Vharril made a noise like he was choking on his own breath. "It is not cute. It is a Varnac. Its adult form can crush a transport pod. Its kind was presumed extinct until 3 cycles ago." Caidan stepped into the surgical bay. The pup was strapped down, but not heavily. No need. It wasn't resisting anymore. And he worked fast. The dislocation was tricky. Its pelvic structure was like a cross between a canine and a reptilian bird. But he managed, realigning the joint with a careful twist and a sickening pop. The pup flinched but didn't cry out. The laceration required sutures. Every time he touched the edges of the wound, its eyes followed his hands. Not angry, just watching. By the end of the procedure, Caidan's hands were soaked. He stepped back, breathing hard. Vitals are holding, Lyra reported from the console. Heart rate's dropping to baseline. Good, he said. I'll stay with it. You sure? She asked. You've been on your feet for 20 hours. It trusts me. Vharril stared through the glass. I don't understand. It shouldn't trust anything, not after what it's been through. Caidan leaned against the wall of the ICU bay, eyes on the pup. Maybe it knows when someone's trying to help. The next 24 hours were quiet. The pup didn't move much, but it watched everything. It refused food from the droids, but accepted a glucose mixture from Caidan's hand. It let him clean its muzzle and check its dressings. He didn't try to pet it, he wasn't stupid. But at one point it rested its head against his boot and sighed. By the third day, the bite wounds on its flank were healing. The fur was growing back. It limped slightly, but only when it moved too fast. The facility, however, was in chaos. The Varnac's presence had triggered a Level 5 security review. Command staff from the local orbital station were demanding its termination. There were rumors of a bounty issued by the Yev Coalition, something about the Varnac being a potential weapon species. The ethics board was already involved. Caidan was called into a hearing. You want us to authorize continued care, the director said, folding his arms, for a species known to be uncontainable? It's injured, Caidan said. It's not a threat right now. It will be. Not if it's raised properly. Vharril sat across from him, silent. The director leaned forward. You're asking us to let you raise a Varnac, like a pet. No, Caidan said, like a patient. There was silence. Then Vharril cleared his throat. I've reviewed the footage. The pup has not exhibited unprovoked aggression since arrival. It responds to Caidan's voice commands. It recognizes stress cues. He hesitated. It even attempted to shield him during the incident in the corridor yesterday. Caidan turned. You saw that? Vharril nodded slowly. The director exhaled. You have 7 days. If it shows any violent behavior, it's terminated. Caidan didn't sleep much that week. He logged every interaction, monitored vitals, kept the pup on a strict recovery schedule. He called it Korr, after a childhood dog back on Earth. It responded to the name. By day 6, it was walking without a limp. On day 7, it barked an actual bark when Caidan entered the room. Not a growl, not a snarl, a bark. The director watched the recording twice. All right, he said. It stays, for now. Caidan didn't celebrate. He just went back to the ICU and sat beside the pup. Korr nuzzled against his arm. You're a menace, he whispered. But I've seen worse. Vharril stepped into the room cautiously. It licked my hand, he said. I didn't know what to do. Caidan shrugged. Means it likes you. I thought it meant it wanted to taste me for later. Could be both. Vharril shook his head. Your species is terrifying. Caidan smiled faintly. We get that a lot. Korr refused the protein slurry again. Caidan watched from the observation terminal as the pup nudged the feeding dish with its snout, then turned away with a huff that ruffled the bedding in its enclosure. Its weight had stabilized, but the muscle regeneration wasn't where it needed to be, and the dietary supplements weren't cutting it. He's not going to touch that, Caidan muttered. Lyra leaned against the console beside him, glancing at the tray. 3rd batch this cycle. I even added that smoked algae paste you said he liked. Yeah, he liked it once. Now he's holding out for the real stuff. Caidan rubbed the bridge of his nose. We need meat. Actual meat. Uncooked? Lyra's eyebrows climbed. That's going to trigger another ethics review. Then we feed it to him when no one's watching. Caidan. He looked over. I'm not letting him atrophy because the committee's scared of optics. He's recovering from a compound leg fracture, massive blood loss, and he's 6 weeks old. If this were a human child, they'd be hand-feeding him steak tartare. Lyra exhaled. He's not a child. He's not a monster either. She didn't argue. She just tapped her wrist pad and started compiling the requisition for off-world protein synth. Caidan keyed open the enclosure. The air inside was warmer by a few degrees, adjusted daily to match Korr's native climate data. The pup's ears perked up when he stepped in, then flattened again as it circled the feeding bowl and grumbled low in its throat. It wasn't angry, it was offended. "Yeah, I know," Caidan said, crouching. "You're a prince, and this is beneath you." Korr flopped down and nosed the bowl toward him. Caidan took it, sniffed the contents, and winced. Fair point. They sat together for a while, Korr breathing slow, tail flicking occasionally. The scar on its flank had faded to a smooth patch of pale skin, the fur growing in a lighter silver now, a side effect of the regenerative serum, maybe, or just stress. The door buzzed. Dr. Vharril stood stiffly in the threshold, holding a sealed carrier with both hands, and a look like he was handling unstable explosives. "I brought the meat," he said, voice carefully neutral. Caidan stood. "Raw or synth, cultured flesh from Kepri grazers. No neurological imprint, no pain memory. It's been cleared by the internal ethics node." He walked forward slowly, eyes on Korr, who rose and sniffed the air. "I still believe this is a mistake." "Noted. Hand it over." Vharril passed the container without stepping too close. Korr didn't growl, but his gaze tracked every motion. Caidan popped the seal. The meat was dark, lean, and still faintly warm. He placed it on a fresh tray, slid it forward, and stepped back. Korr's eyes flicked to Caidan, then to the meat, then back again. "Permission granted," Caidan said. That was apparently all it needed. Korr lunged, teeth flashing, and tore into the slab with a noise that made Vharril flinch backward. "This is what you want to keep in a medical facility," Vharril said. "A creature that eats like a malfunctioning mulcher." Caidan watched the pup devour the meat in under a minute, then sit back, chest rising with contentment. "He's a growing boy. Do you even hear yourself?" "Loud and clear." Vharril hesitated. "There's a delegation arriving tomorrow. Yev Coalition. They requested a tour." Caidan's eyes narrowed. "They're not coming in here." "They requested—" "They're not coming in here." Vharril looked at the pup, who was now licking traces of blood from the tray with a pleased expression. "They'll want to see the subject." "He's not a subject, he's a patient." "They will not see it that way." Caidan stood and stepped between Vharril and the enclosure. "Then I suggest you don't let them." Vharil's jaw tightened, but he said nothing and left. Korr finished cleaning the tray and patted over, nosing Caidan's hand. He sat, hind legs splayed awkwardly, and tilted his head like he was waiting for something. "You're going to get us both fired," Caidan said. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a soft cloth ball. He tossed it gently. Korr pounced, skidded across the padded floor, and returned it with a low huff. Not a bark. Not quite, but close. The next morning the delegation arrived. 12 Yev, 2 Terran liaisons, and a translator drone hovered into the reception wing. Caidan stayed in the lower levels, eyes fixed on the monitor feed. Vharril guided them through the upper tiers of the medical wing, avoiding any mention of the ICU annex. Things went fine until the drone began scanning the facility's active patient index. "What's the protocol IDK-7?" one of the Yev asked. Its voice was filtered through the drone, flat and metallic. Vharril hesitated. "A recovery case, not scheduled for viewing." "Speech. Private classification. It's not a valid designation. It is under Post-Trauma Research Council statutes, Section 48-6. The Yev stepped closer. "You're hiding something." "I'm protecting someone." Caidan watched the feed cut out. He stood, grabbed his kit, and went to the ICU. Korr was pacing, ears flat. He'd heard the alarms earlier, the shift in voices, the tension. He wasn't snarling, but the fur along his spine bristled in waves. Easy, Caidan said, kneeling. They're not coming in here. Korr's gaze flicked to the door, then back. Outside, voices rose, then footsteps, then silence. Caidan waited. Finally, the alert light above the door blinked off. Vharril entered, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. They're filing a petition, official classification review. They want to remove him from the facility and transfer him to a containment lab. Caidan didn't respond immediately. He just reached for Korr's leg brace and checked the alignment. Still solid. They won't get him, Caidan said finally. Vharril sat on the bench against the wall. You can't stop them, not through channels. Then we'll go around. Vharril looked up. Around? Off-grid med transport. Unlisted sector. I know a place. You're suggesting we smuggle a Varnac pup out of a council facility during an active investigation? Caidan nodded. Exactly. Vharril blinked slowly. You are clinically unhinged. And you're welcome to stay behind. He didn't. Late that night, while the facility ran on skeleton staff, they moved. Caidan loaded Korr into a containment crate modified with comfort padding and airflow sensors. Lyra handled the clearance codes, looping the internal cams with a pre-recorded maintenance cycle. Vharril secured the exit route through the waste reclamation tunnel. It wasn't glamorous. It involved crawling through a vent that smelled like old coolant and fungus spores. Korr seemed to find it amusing. He licked Vharril's ear once just to watch him shriek. They emerged in a dark maintenance bay on the far edge of the colony ring. A shuttle waited, unmarked, older model but space-worthy. The pilot, a grizzled Tharn woman with 3 cybernetic eyes and 0 patience, waved them in without a word. Destination? She asked as they strapped in. Anywhere without a council outpost, Caidan said. She nodded. That narrows it down to about 3 rock piles and a mining colony with no plumbing. Perfect. Korr curled on the floor beside Caidan's seat, head resting on his boot. He was calm. Alert, but calm. As the shuttle lifted, Vharril stared out the viewport, silent. You could have stayed, Caidan said. I considered it, Vharril replied. Then I remembered what it did when I dropped that scanner last week. What sniffed it? No, it brought it back. Caidan grinned. Like I said, just a pup. Vharril shook his head. I don't know what's more frightening, that it didn't attack us or that it knew not to. They jumped to light speed. Somewhere behind them, the council would be tracing logs, interrogating droids, issuing warrants. But none of that mattered right now. Right now, Korr was asleep, tail twitching slightly, nose pressed into the edge of Caidan's coat. Caidan leaned back against the seat, eyes closed. He'd figure out tomorrow, when it came. The mining colony was called Tarus 4, which made it sound more important than it was. In reality, it was a sun-baked basin of red stone and metallic dust with gravity just a notch above Earth standard and the social charm of a broken vending unit. It didn't have a starport, just a landing strip carved into a plateau and a prefabricated docking dome that served as customs, refueling hub, and bar depending on the hour. They arrived mid-rotation when the heat shimmered off the rocks and even the native beetle herders kept to the shade. Caidan stepped off the shuttle first, squinting through the glare. Korr padded beside him, tongue lolling, paws crunching softly on the dust. You sure this place has medical facilities? Vharril asked, shielding his eyes against the light. They have wounds, Caidan said. Where there are wounds, there's a med bay. The Tharn pilot grunted, unloaded the crate of supplies, and left without ceremony. Lyra had stayed behind on the orbital station to delay the reports. She'd insisted someone needed to erase them properly. Caidan didn't argue. They made their way down a winding path carved into the rock, leading toward a cluster of low buildings clinging to the cliffside like barnacles. The air smelled of rust and engine coolant. A pair of locals, scaled bipeds with wide jaws and mechanical eye plates, watched them pass, but said nothing. Inside the dome, they found the med bay. It was a single room bolted to the side of a hydroponic module, with a faded sign reading Injuries, Ailments, and Other Unwelcome Developments. A 6-armed Yurin was inside, cleaning what looked like a cauterizer with her lower hands while filing her own claws with the upper pair. She glanced up at Korr, then at Caidan. "You bring a bomb or a patient?" "Something in between," Caidan said. "I'm a vet. He's recovering from surgery. I need space." "Rent's 2 credits an hour," she said. "You break anything, you pay double." "I'm not here to break anything. I'm here to stabilize muscle growth and calibrate joint movement." She snorted. "You make it sound more boring than it is. Fine. You clean your own blood." Korr sniffed a corner, sneezed, then turned in a circle and collapsed on the floor with a heavy sigh. They set up in the back room, where the equipment was at least a few decades out of date, but functional. Caidan began unpacking the stim injectors, nutrient packs, and the brace modifications. The urine, who introduced herself as Kesh, watched from the doorway, arms crossed. "You know, when I saw your species pop up on the landing logs, I figured we'd get a diplomatic mess or a bar fight," she gestured to Korr. "Didn't expect a pup." "He doesn't like bars," Caidan said, scanning Korr's leg, "and he only fights when someone else starts it." Korr licked his own shoulder and stared at Kesh. "You're lucky," she said. "If the miners see him, they'll try to catch him for sport. They pay good credits for exotic hunts." Caidan didn't look up. "Anyone tries that, they'll need more than a vet." She grinned. "I like you." They started treatment immediately. Korr's left hindquarter had developed a slight tremor from overcompensating during healing. Caidan adjusted the brace, then used a handheld stimulator to apply controlled pulses to the surrounding tissue. Korr tensed, growled faintly, then settled again, eyes flickering with concentration. "Good," Caidan murmured. "You feel that? That's the muscle realigning." Korr thumped his tail once. Vharril paced the room, too tall for the ceiling, bumping into low-hanging light fixtures twice before he gave up and crouched by the wall. "Explain this to me again," he said. "Why are we adjusting a brace by hand instead of using auto-calibration?" "Because your medtechs never designed the software for a Varnac," Caidan said. "And because he's growing faster than any algorithm can adapt. I'd rather do it manually than risk a misfire that snaps his leg again." Vharril muttered something in his own language. Kesh handed him a cup of distilled water with a straw. 3 hours later, Korr stood under his own power and walked a short circuit around the room. His gait was smoother, still heavy but balanced. The tremor had stopped. He stopped in front of Caidan and leaned slightly against his leg. Kesh made a low whistle. "I've seen war beasts stitched together with half a medbay and a prayer, but nothing like that." "He's not a war beast," Caidan said. She tilted her head. "Not yet." The next morning, the miners found out. It started with a noise deep, echoing, and followed by the sound of something heavy tipping over. Caidan and Vharril were in the medbay when the door burst open, and a trio of armored locals stormed in, one of them holding a dart rifle. "Where is it?" the lead one barked. "The thing that left claw marks on our loader?" Kesh didn't blink. "That loader's been falling apart since last cycle. Maybe it finally gave up." One of them shoved a tray off the counter. "We saw the prints." Caidan stepped forward. "You want to explain how you got claw marks on a loader parked inside a sealed hangar?" They turned toward him. The leader narrowed his eyes. "You're the outsider with the animal. He's not loose." "You've got him sedated?" "No, I've got him trained." That got a laugh from the one with the rifle. "You're telling me you trained a Varnac pup?" Caidan didn't answer. He whistled once, short, sharp. From the back room, Korr padded out, head high, eyes alert. He stopped beside Caidan and sat, tail flicking once. The miners stared. "Holy stars," one of them muttered. Korr tilted his head, then yawned. The leader stepped back, bumping into the doorframe. "That's not normal." "He's recovering," Caidan said, "from an injury caused by someone else trying what you're probably about to." The one with the rifle raised it instinctively. Korr didn't growl. He stood. The air shifted. "You don't want to do that," Caidan said. "Not because I'll stop you. Because he will." The rifle lowered. The miners left. No one spoke for a while. Finally, Vharril exhaled. "I'm starting to understand why your kind doesn't just survive, it adapts like a virus. Caidan crouched by Korr, checking the leg again. He didn't attack. That's the point. Kesh nodded slowly. You've got something here. Not just a trained predator, a partner. Caidan scratched behind Korr's ear. He leaned into it. You can stay here as long as you want, Kesh said. Just keep him away from the hydroponics. Away? He ate a whole bin of root bulbs during the last blackout. I don't know how he opened the lock. Caidan looked at Korr. We've talked about this. Korr sneezed. A week passed. The colony adapted grudgingly. Korr learned to walk beside cargo carts without barking at the wheels. The beetle herders stopped flinching. Caidan set up a routine: morning muscle stim, midday terrain walks, evening brace adjustments. Korr tolerated it all, even seemed to enjoy the checkups. He greeted Kesh with a huff each morning and once brought her a rock. She kept it on the shelf like a trophy. One evening, just before rest cycle, Vharril sat beside Caidan outside the dome, watching the red sun dip behind the cliffs. You could have left him, Vharril said. Could have walked away. I could have, Caidan replied. Why? Didn't you? Caidan tossed a pebble down the slope. Because someone else would have tried to control him, or kill him, or turn him into something he's not, and because he trusted me. Vharril was quiet for a long moment. You were right, you know. About what? It wasn't a bomb. Caidan smiled. No, just a pup. Korr trotted up from the lower path, a large beetle shell in his mouth, tail wagging. He dropped it at Caidan's feet and sat proudly. Great, Caidan said. Now he's bringing me gifts. You're doomed, Vharril said. I've been doomed since the day I opened that crate. Korr barked once, loud, joyful. The sound echoed across the rocks. No one flinched.